could not be higher. Former President Trump presents a grave risk to our country, our global alliances, and the future of democracy. As president, he regularly ignored the rule of law. One of his first acts was to order an unconstitutional Muslim travel ban. His last act was to try to stay in power by defying election results and the will of the American people. In between, he put in place extremely conservative Supreme Court justices who reversed long-standing precedents and legal protections, stripping women of reproductive rights, gutting environmental protections, and granting Trump virtual immunity for his official acts. And this shot across the bow about the dangers of a second Trump presidency comes from a who's who of Justice Department stalwarts, former Justice Department officials who served under presidents of both parties, former U.S. attorneys who served in offices from coast to coast, top Justice Department leaders like former Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former Acting Attorney General Sally Yates. When that level of Justice Department firepower joins forces to sound the alarm about a clear and present danger to the rule of law and our democracy, it is incumbent on us as voters to pay attention. It's where we start the hour. Some of our favorite experts and friends. Former lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee, Tim Hafey's here. Former Deputy Attorney General Jamie Gorelick is here. Jamie and Tim signed the letter we just mentioned. Also joining us, former prosecutor at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman is here. Jamie, you do not speak out often, particularly in the context of partisan politics. Tell me what's behind the letter.
Nicolle, this is a call to action. We are very worried about what happens to the Justice Department, which we revere, in a second Trump administration. The rule of law is so fundamental to who we are as a country, and yet it would be threatened, drastically threatened, by Donald Trump.
Jamie, I think some of what the country went through during the first Trump term was so, he did a volume business of scandal. But I wonder with the benefit of President Biden's sort of stable 4 years and Merrick Garland's stewardship of that department, when you look back, how do you rank the abuses in terms of most egregious to sort of also ran?
It's hard to know where to begin, but one of the highest ranking I would name would be his direction to his Department of Justice to prosecute his political opponents. Happily, in his first term, there were people who said no. That won't happen in his second term. He will use the Department of Justice to achieve his political ends. And, he started with the Muslim ban, he ended with the insurrection, and everything in between is anathema to the rule of law and to what we think of as our Department of Justice, standing apart, ensuring that the laws are applied fairly. I mean, it would be a disaster.
You know, and sort of like a puppy that you're trying to potty train. There are lots of, I mean, he did, to keep the potty training puppy metaphor going, he did have a lot of accidents on the rug in his effort to use the department to prosecute his friends. I mean, Jeffrey Berman wrote a book and talked about being asked by D.C. to prosecute folks where he thought the facts weren't there. Michael Cohen has written a book. He believes that the Bureau of Prisons sent him to solitary as a punishment for wanting to write a book. I mean, there was some, John Durham investigated a lot of individuals for 4 years, racking up legal fees, came up with 2 unsuccessful prosecutions of other individuals. I mean, there were successful efforts to weaponize the Justice Department. He's promising in a second term to operationalize that. Can you just tell us what that looks like?
The career people at the Department of Justice were, during the Trump term, the stalwarts who stopped a great deal of mischief and worse from happening. Those people were hanging by their fingernails by the time that Merrick Garland was sworn in as Attorney General. He has done everything he can to restore that sense of the rule of law, the purpose of the Department of Justice. And the problem is that most of those constraints are norms. And Trump is norm busting. I'm not going to go with your potty training metaphor. I just can't go there. But I will tell you, he is a danger. He is a danger to the rule of law. The rule of law is not just a concept. It's fundamental to our country. It's fundamental to our businesses. One of the big advantages that U.S. business has is that it can tell its customers, it can tell people in other countries, you have rights that can be adjudicated in the United States. If we don't have that, if we don't have fair application of the law in this country, we're dead. We are dead. So this letter came together in 24 hours. People said we have to alert the nation to the dangers.
I mean, Jamie, I've heard what you just said about if you don't have the rule of law, you don't have a vibrant economy. Where are the business leaders? Why didn't they sign the letter? Where's their letter?
Well, we didn't ask them to sign the letter, and I don't know where their letter is. It was interesting on January 6th what happened. The business community condemned the insurrection and stopped making political contributions to people who would have taken the election results away from Joe Biden. Where they are today, I don't know. I'm hopeful that business leaders will see the threat to their businesses, their shareholders, and frankly, their souls.
Tim Hafey, sometimes we have to sift through signals Trump sends, and sometimes he just says it out loud. Here he is on Univision saying this out loud.
You say they weaponized the Justice Department, they weaponized the FBI. Would you do the same if you're reelected?
If they do this, they've already done it, but if they want to follow through on this, it could certainly happen in reverse. It could certainly happen in reverse. What they've done is they've released the genie out of the box. If I happen to be president and I see somebody who's doing well and beating me very badly, I say, go down and indict them. Mostly what that would be, they would be out of business. They'd be out. They'd be out of the election.
The genie's in the bottle, not the box. But the more egregious part of that statement is he's saying if someone were beating him in an election, he'd, quote, go down and indict them. This is where we are. This is our choice.
Yeah, it's shocking, Nicolle, for anyone like me or Jamie or Andrew who grew up in the department and revere the place, the historic independence and integrity of the place. The best response I can have to all of this is to contrast it to my experience when I was appointed by President Obama as a U.S. attorney. I've told you this story on the show before, that he brought all of the newly appointed U.S. attorneys together in the East Room of the White House. And the first thing he said to us was, you're not my lawyers. I don't want you for a minute to make a decision based on what you think is best for me or for this administration. You're there to do justice. You're there to work for the good of the people of your district. And that's what I want you to do. And that's not just what Democrats have said. That's what Republicans have said. That is what attorneys general have said through the years until now, and until what I fear would be an attorney general appointed more on the basis of potential loyalty than competence, who would not respect that historic tradition. So it's frightening. And that is why I lent my name to the letter. We can't let that happen.
I think you're uniquely situated to articulate how far Trump traveled in this endeavor in a first term. Let me play some of the evidence you developed as lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee.
So who's Jeff Clark? An environmental lawyer with no experience relevant to leading the entire Department of Justice. What was his only qualification? That he would do whatever the president wanted him to do, including overthrowing a free and a fair democratic election.
I made the point that Jeff Clark is not even competent to serve as the Attorney General. He's never been a criminal attorney. He's never conducted a criminal investigation in his life. He's never been in front of a grand jury, much less a trial jury. And he kind of retorted by saying, well, I've done a lot of very complicated appeals and civil litigation, environmental litigation, and things like that. And I said, that's right, you're an environmental lawyer. How about you go back to your office and we'll call you when there's an oil spill? And Pat Cipollone weighed in at one point, I remember saying, you know, that letter that this guy wants to send, that letter is a murder-suicide pact. It's going to damage everyone who touches it. And we should have nothing to do with that letter.
I mean, to maybe it goes without saying there would be no Richard Donohue's in a second Trump Department of Justice. Explain what it would look like instead.
Yeah, there were guardrails, thankfully. You know, what we found was that after Attorney General Barr, Rich Donohue, acting Attorney General Jeff Rosen, after official told the president directly, there's just no evidence of systemic voter fraud, he refused to believe it. Instead, he proposed the installation of an acting attorney general, this guy, Jeff Clark, who not only was not qualified on the merits to serve in that position, but was prepared to take action that had no basis in fact or law. And but for Rich Donohue and a lot of others who came together and said, we're all going to resign. This is the Pat Cipollone advocacy, the murder-suicide pact argument, but for strong Republican lawyers, partisans of this administration stepping forward, it could have happened. And you could have already, in the first Trump term, had a Justice Department that was truly weaponized or was truly willing to take action without foundation. I don't have any confidence that the Rich Donohues, that the Pat Cipollones will be there this time, Nicolle. That, again, is why the stakes are so high for the Department of Justice and beyond in this election.
Andrew Weissman, I feel like we've had an ongoing conversation about threats to the rule of law. The real threat in the November election is the elimination of the rule of law. Have we spent enough time contemplating that?
You know, for the people who you are speaking to on this program, I don't think any of us would think you could spend enough time on that. I wanted to make two quick points. One, I wanted to make sure everyone understood who Jamie Gorelick is, since she does not appear the way Tim and I do often. She was the Deputy Attorney General under Janet Reno and is revered by people who are in the department and outside of the department. And as you mentioned, does not do this, you know, and appear the way Tim and I do. This is a big deal. I remember Jamie saying to me with respect to the first Muslim ban, this is sort of an I am Spartacus moment. It is a time that people have to stand up and be counted. And I just want to make sure people understand the significance of her and